I had 48 hours to escape Prehistoria, an abandoned Jurassic Park style facility filled with deadly dinosaurs. 2 days ago, this park suffered a serious containment breach and was evacuated, and I've been sent in to recover the top secret files. Join me as I journey through Prehistoria, encounter some of nature's most formidable predators, and dive into the depths to confront the terrors that lurk below. Welcome to Claude, and to begin this story, it's time to take you back to where it all began. You join us in hour 1 of our adventure, as I prepare to set sail towards Prehistoria. On the radio, the host murmurs away about how a rescue team has yet to arrive at Prehistoria, which is music to my ears, as I was going to need as much time as possible to complete my mission. They did also mention something about how one of the apex marine predators had potentially escaped, but as they denied it, I'm sure that's all fine. So with my sailing boat all anchored down, I set off with speed towards Prehistoria. In the background though, we didn't get off to the best of starts, as my boat was devoured whole by what appeared to be a megalodon. So after an interesting start to our mission, our story begins on the docks of Prehistoria, on a dark, stormy night. Normally after arriving on an island full of dinosaurs, I'd feel pretty scared, but after what I just witnessed in the ocean, I was just happy to be on land. Shortly after arriving, I found a pistol and some ammo, along with a note explaining what my mission would be. The note detailed my mission to grab an encrypted flash drive containing sensitive data, and how the park 48 hours ago had suffered a breach during the operation. Apparently the breach was none of my concern, which did feel slightly dodgy and left me wondering how exactly this had all come about. I was also informed that all the creatures on the island were expendable, which I suppose was good as I wouldn't have to make friends with a T-Rex, and lastly I was informed that I had 48 hours to complete my mission before the park management was sent in to send in an emergency rescue team. I suppose it was time to get down to work. With the note secured and my mission clear, I set off towards Pier B, the monorail station, where I assumed I would be able to get the monorail to the park. Upon arriving in the station though, after admiring the nice fossil on the wall, I took a little look around at all the stretchers and blood on the floor. Whatever had happened here, it clearly was not pretty. Nevertheless, it looked like everyone, or everything maybe, was gone now. So I boarded the monorail and headed up to the park. As we said goodbye to Pier B, I had no idea what was going to be waiting for me at the very next station. According to the voiceover, this park had been open since 1993, meaning that it had actually been open for quite some time, seemingly without major incident. Suddenly though, out of the window, I spotted none other than what I could only assume to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex storming down one of the main streets. It appeared that the dinosaurs were well and truly on the loose. After arriving at the monorail station, I got off the train and briefly checked out the station. Once more there were some sleeping bags, a ton of blood, and various supplies all over the floor. It looked like it had been a massacre in here. I headed outside and began to take a look around. I discovered a shelter which I would check out shortly, and the self-access tunnel. However, it appeared for now at least I did not have access to this, as the door was locked. I walked up to the main gate of the park, where I found a note for the recovery team that wasn't due in for another 48 hours apparently. It stated that the entire park had undergone a full lockdown, with the gates locked and sealed. The keycard for the gate I had just seen would be kept in the shelter that I just walked by, and that the shelters were also full of various supplies, which sounded pretty promising. So off I went to check out the shelter, which surprise surprise was also full of blood. Inside the shelter I picked up a first aid kit, which sounded like it could be very handy down the line, and also the main gate access card. I collected a little bit more ammo, and then checked out the shelter a little more. This place was really starting to give me the creeps, and I didn't particularly want to spend any more time in it here, so I made a swift exit and headed for the main gate. After reaching the gate, I swiped my access card, which made a jingle sound indicating that the gate was now successfully open. I could already hear noises coming from inside the park, so as the gate opened, I held the gun ready and peered round all the corners. It probably would have been a good idea to have actually reloaded the gun first, but luckily for me, inside at least as much as I could see so far, the entrance to Prehistoria was full of just herbivores, such as this stegosaur, which I admired, while keeping a relatively safe distance away, as I didn't want to antagonise it. No one wants to be impaled by those Phagomisers. I also found some Gallimimuses that at first I thought might be dead, before they got up and started sprinting around, and they were clearly just sleeping. While I was told all these dinosaurs were expendable, there was no point in wasting my ammo on dinosaurs who tolerated my presence, as I was sure there was going to be some more danger to come. After establishing the Main Street area appeared to be clear, I entered the Prehistoria Museum and was immediately met with a stunning Tyrannosaurus Rex fossil of Big Bertha, as well as a model which looked very similar to the real Rex that I had seen while on the monorail. It was now time to check out some of the history, and we started with a picture of the Prehistoria Rexes, Reaper and Havoc. These sibling brothers from Enquiries Island apparently had their names well earned, as they are the only Rexes documented to have hunted for sport. They were relocated to Prehistoria Park in 2002. It appeared that the dinosaurs from Prehistoria had all been relocated from a place called Enquiries Island, wherever that is. Although perhaps the most concerning news for me is that there was apparently a second Rex somewhere on the island that I had not yet laid eyes on. I admired a second painting of Reaper and Havoc, took another look at the model, and then read the information relating to Big Bertha, who was apparently discovered dead in her nest on Enquiries Island, and being a recent discovery has been the source of countless scientific discoveries. I continue to have a little look around the museum, although we're starting to get slightly creeped out by the sounds of dinosaurs that appear to be coming from inside the wall. I picked up a bandage which may come in useful later, and then checked out the fossil display, and was given a task to apparently find the missing fossil, as one of them was missing. There were a couple of doors in this place that didn't seem to be open or were locked somehow, and I was still sure that I could hear something behind this wall, but as I seem to have looked around everything there is to see right now, I took my leave from the museum. I took a brief look around the nearby spooky restroom and picked myself up another first aid kit, and then headed back into the rain and examined a map of Main Street, so I could check out what places I still needed to explore. One of these was the medical centre, which I successfully located and opened the door to. Inside, I was immediately met with a massive trail of blood, while the sound system spoke to me about the power of the Megalodon and the Mosasaur,
the largest above-ground aquariums on the planet,
at the Monsters of the Deep Aquarium. Hopefully I wouldn't have to go near them anytime soon. As expected with a medical centre, this was a good place to gather tons of supplies, such as antiseptics, some bandages and first aid kits. Satisfied that I had seen everything there was to see in here, I didn't have to go far before coming across the ranger station, the next place to explore. Inside, as I entered, it seemed extremely dead, and for once no blood could actually be seen. An interesting discovery though that I did find was a door labelled the Armory. I couldn't seem to open it now though, so I continued on through to the next room. It appeared that the power of the ranger station had been cut off, and if somehow I could put it back online, perhaps the door for the Armory would open. With only a basic pistol to my name for now, this was something that I was certainly interested in. I briefly examined some of the pictures inside, which included one of what I assumed to be the resident mosasaur, before concluding that there wasn't much else to see in here, so I took my leave. Of course, if we were ever in a position to get that armory door open, that may change. So I left the ranger station and examined the map, wondering where to go next. I decided that I wanted to pop back to the museum, just to see if I had missed anything, and after a brief friendly encounter with a stegosaur, I located a note in the museum regarding the missing fossil. It apparently had triggered the internal security system, which had caused some of the doors to lock. It was also apparently worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Of course, this was little compared to the fee that I was about to collect if I got off this godforsaken island alive, but if it opened the doors, this fossil might still be of use to me. So back out I went in search of the fossil, first checking the Dino Bites cafe, but all I found in there was a ton of meat, which could be used as bait. I then popped over to Triceratoys, which I'm not gonna lie was an absolutely great time, because who doesn't love a shop full of dinosaur plushies? But it wasn't very useful in my hunt for the fossil. That night I found a sleeping Gallimimus, who looked very annoyed to have been disturbed by me, and then walked up to a big gated door called Herbivore Haven, where I found yet another note. It seemed that judging by the note, I was going to need to grab a green access card from Pier A, and to get that I would have to go through that creepy tunnel door that was located next to the monorail station. I didn't yet know how to access these south tunnels, but it was good to at least know that I needed to use them at some point. But in a bigger bonus, at the Herbivore Haven restroom, I found nothing other than the missing fossil, which was apparently a fish fossil Vita that belonged in the museum. Curious about what I would actually be able to do in the museum now the fossil had been located, I immediately ran back to the museum doors and placed the fossil back to where it was meant to be. Immediately a door opened and I had now access to a brand new room. However, in some more concerning news, the growling dinosaur noises seem to be sounding even closer now, and while it did sound like that whatever it was sleeping, it did not sound like a sleeping stegosaur or Gallimimus. I had a quick look around the bottom floor, but couldn't really see much of interest here, so headed on upstairs as a door had also opened here. In this room, I was able to learn more about the different creatures of Prehistoria and what I might have to face in my mission. First was the raptors, or the Enquiries deinonychuses to be precise. The photo had a brief description next to it, stating that these raptors may look photogenic, but they are nature's most efficient predator. Visit Lucy, Betty and Diesel in the raptor range. As much as they sounded charming, I think I will pass, thank you very much. Next up was Dave the Dinosuchus, an enormous crocodilian species from the late Cretaceous. This massive crocodilian lives in the sunken forest. Dave is a bit of a bone crusher, so be aware. He was rescued in 2008 with life-threatening injuries from Invara Island. Not quite sure whose bones Dave had been crushing so far, but I was determined that it wouldn't be mine. Next up was Mordana. I'd heard over the radio earlier that the park apparently housed mosasaurs, and this one in the shot was Mordana, a mosasaur with a double-hinged jaw and flexible skull. Apparently she was a bit of a cannibal and was rescued in 2015. She sounded absolutely delightful. Almost as delightful as Benton and Lexi, who were a brother and sister Spinosaurus pair. The photo showed them playing in their enclosure, although I wasn't quite sure exactly how Spinosaurs played, but I doubt it was by chasing tennis balls. It was clear as I examined the last picture of Big Billy the Brachiosaur that Prehistoria had all kinds of dangers, and if I made it off this island alive, I would have earned every single penny of my enormous fee. Slightly freaked out at the noises that I could still hear coming from the walls, I left the museum once more to check out the staff centre. Walking into here was quite the nice change of scenery, as the place for once wasn't full of blood. Inside the staff centre though, I found something very useful indeed. The South Tunnel access key. This would allow me to open the previously locked door that led towards Pier A, where I needed to go to get the security access card. Before heading off for the tunnels though, I felt that I had some last digging to do in the museum to work out what on earth the noises were inside the walls, and on one of the cleaning trolleys I found a museum key. I assumed this key would open the final door that I hadn't been able to access, so I headed over. Approaching the door, I felt I could hear the noises getting nearer, but nothing prepared me for what was on the other side of this door. I had just about survived my first hostile interaction with a dinosaur. Down to only 19 health when I shot the final bullet, I was fortunate to survive this one. I immediately popped a medkit and then got to work on exploring the rest of the area. There appeared to be a human leg on the floor, indicating that some poor soul had already met this raptor. Based on the pictures, this was the first of 3 raptors down at least, so hopefully I'd only have 2 more to worry about. I carefully entered what looked to be an office, and on the desk I found a note from Monica. Monica was apparently staying behind to look for the missing fossil, which I of course had found. With that in mind, and the fact there was a raptor and a human leg on the floor of this area, I felt that the chances of Monica's survival were quite low. Interesting to see that she had also flagged a raptor containment breach. As I had just encountered a live one inside a museum corridor, there did appear to be a little bit of an issue there. I left the office and continued through another set of doors. This room appeared to be pretty dead inside, but lying on one of the countertops was an electrical fuse, which I remembered could be used to power up the ranger station, which had been lacking some power. I exited through the previously locked back door using my museum key and was back on to the main street. I ran back through the street that was still full of friendly Gallimimuses and headed over to an emergency shelter that I was yet to check out. Inside was the usual type of things that you might find in Prehistoria, such as a ton of blood, some emergency medkits, but I also found an electrical wire, which seemed like something that might be also useful for powering up that ranger station once more. I had a feeling that that armory was going to be worth checking out, but to do that I had to pop back over to the ranger station itself and get it back online. Thankfully the fuse that I had collected was good enough for that, and power had now been restored to the ranger station. So I went back through the building, warily pointing my gun around every corner after that last raptor attack, and made my way inside the armory. Inside I had hit the jackpot. There was a ton of various ammo types, but also weapons. Ranging from assault rifles to a shotgun, we had truly hit the motherlode. With a significant power boost now under my arsenal, I was confident that it was time to take on the South Tunnels, and whatever there that was waiting for me. So back to the monorail station I headed, and over to the South Tunnel door. I opened the door and almost turned right back around, as this place looked like the last place you ever wanted to go in an abandoned dinosaur park. I didn't have to go very far before I started to hear what I can only describe as scary dinosaur noises. But perhaps more concerning was the nest and dinosaur egg that I found down here. This park had only been shut down for 48 hours, but it appeared that the dinosaurs had not hung about. But that obviously confirmed it. There was something down here with me, and I was not imagining these noises. With my shotgun at the ready, I crept round the corners and spotted them. Raptors. I saw 2 of them and they saw me. The shotgun though was very much stronger than the pistol, and at this moment in time I was very glad that I'd gone to do the extra work to open the armory. 3 raptors were dead now, and I had only read about 3 in the museum, so I was hopeful that that was going to be the last one. I continued on through the bloodstained tunnels and found a few more examples of human remains. It appeared that some of these people had tried to hide out here, away from the carnage, but that probably wasn't working too well when the raptors got in. Just how they managed to get into these tunnels though, was still to be explained. Continuing on down the corridor, I thought that I could hear something else, and I turned out to be right. A sleeping raptor was easily taken out by my shotgun. But the question remained though, how many more of these things were there? After all, I had originally only thought there was 3, but I had now already taken out 4 of the things. I picked up a couple of bits of scrap metal in the rest of the tunnels, and soon reached a pipe of some sort where boiling hot smoke was coming out of it. It was clear that I was going to have to shut this off before I could continue on through the tunnels. Luckily, I didn't have to go far to find myself a wrench, which I thought might be useful for that pipe, and then crafted some more shotgun ammo with the resources I had, as I also found a workbench down here. I was able to successfully use the wrench to shut off the leaking pipe, and then I could keep on going through the tunnels. Soon I reached the end of them, and as I reached a set of doors, I had no idea what was going to be on the other side of them, but I could already hear some more noises. This place seemed to look abandoned, and by abandoned I mean far longer than the 48 hours this park has been shut down. Then I remembered that this must be the South Main Street that I had read about in the note, and this was apparently shut years ago. There was a statue of the Spinosaurs in this area of the park, and I couldn't help but wonder if I was about to run into Benton or Lexi. Instead though, as I ran through the trees out of nowhere, came another raptor. Just in time though, I got the final shot in on the raptor and survived the attack. But this was a reminder, I had to be very, very careful around here, as I felt that there were some more raptors nearby. And I knew this because I could hear them. It was late at night by this point, and they were apparently sleeping, so I moved slowly, often crouching, taking out 2 raptors in the process. Yeah, I could still hear more, and indeed there were more, but thankfully I was actually getting quite good at taking these things out now. I found another fuse box which appeared to be offline, so I guess I may need to return power to the street before going any further. So I set about exploring a little bit more, and managed to walk right into a raptor. Down to 21 health, it was another very lucky escape for myself, and I was now back on guard. Before exploring more, I decided to go out and hunt the remaining raptors before they chose to hunt me. Whenever I heard the sounds of one sleeping or moving nearby, I went in with the shotgun, and this was having some good results. I couldn't believe though how many raptors this place had though. Where on earth had they all come from? Anyway, after a little while I found a note which seemed to be in an abandoned office, and it referenced the closure of this section of the park all the way back in 2006. The new information related to an incident involving a megalodon at the park. While the history of this park wasn't really my primary concern, I couldn't help but be enthralled by it and curious as to what this incident was. And of course I was interested in the megalodon, considering I did have beef with it after it had eaten one of my boats. I headed back out of the office building towards where the power grid was, and realised that I had missed out on a note there also, probably as I was thinking about all the raptors that I could hear nearby. Confident though that they were mostly dealt with now, I picked up the note and read it. It appeared that I was going to need to get this power back online from a quick skim read, which would then let me access the Marine Conservation Facility, a place that I didn't really like the sound of, even though it was meant to be shut down. After a little bit of searching, I found myself the self-maintenance shed key, which I had previously not been able to access. I popped over to the locked door, selected the self-maintenance shed key, and the door unlocked for me. The shed itself seemed to have a massive leak problem, and everything in here was incredibly rusty, which was pretty obvious as the place had been shut down since 2006. However, in there I did find a spare fuse for me. Whether it would fry my insides when I put it in the electrical circuit was another matter. Satisfied that I had got what I needed from this area, I headed out of the shed and back towards the power circuit, where I popped the fuse in, and now I had restored power to South Main Street, which would have opened up another door for me on my quest to reach Pier A. And indeed it had, and as I went through the now open door and saw what I assumed to be a long dead Triceratops body on the ground, it wasn't long before I closed in on an area with do not enter signs all over it, which turned out to be the Marine Conservation Centre. No place had felt as creepy as this abandoned area did, and after what I had now read about an incident involving a megalodon, I was on edge, and it didn't take me long until I found some information regarding the megalodon. These young megalodons are the latest members of the Prehistoria Marine Conservation Breeding Program. Even at a young age, they exhibit aggressive hunting instincts and consume up to 800 kg of protein-rich food daily. The bio then went on to discuss why they bred the megalodon, which was apparently to study them and ensure its survival. Not sure about you, but I wasn't exactly sure on the idea of keeping the megalodons alive, and I was actually all for letting them go extinct. The question was, surely the megalodons they referred to weren't still in here though, were they? I then found a section based on the Apex breeding program, and realised that they didn't just breed megalodons here, but they also bred mosasaurs. Fantastic. If I'd ever heard of a recipe for disaster, this seemed to be it. I found a first aid kit and continued to look around the facility, and I had no idea how I was going to get from here to Pier A, and the thought of having to potentially go in that water was making me very, very nervous. I discovered the facts board for the mosasaur, which revealed that there were also young mosasaurs that had been housed here. I was pretty sure that they wouldn't let an asset like that rot away, but how on earth do you transfer a mosasaur? And I had no idea for that answer. Still, this place seemed pretty abandoned, and surely nothing could have survived down here all this long without being seriously looked after. I did think I could hear some brief sounds down there below me, but I must just be imagining things. I continued on a bit until I got to another section of the conservation centre, almost walking straight into the water. It was at this moment that I realised that the glass had been completely smashed. Pre-2006, this would have been open to the public, and it was hard not to come to the conclusion that this cracked area didn't have anything to do with the closure of this part of the park and the megalodon incident that had been referenced. Suddenly, I did the unthinkable and fell in. For a minute, my heart sank. After all, there had been megalodons here at one stage. After briefly looking around though, I realised that I seemed to be in the clear. I did however spot a massive carcass of bones, and came to the conclusion that this, at one point, must have been a megalodon. This also meant though that these poor animals had been left to die, and to be honest at this moment in time, I was all for that brilliant idea. I spotted a gate with a light up ahead, and knew that the only way out of here was going to be through the marine tunnels. I pressed the button and then resurfaced for oxygen, as I had no idea how long the swim was going to be to safety. I was feeling slightly relieved now though, knowing this place was abandoned. As I swam through the tunnels though, I did spot something rather odd. There appeared to be a great white shark in there. Quite how this great white had survived or why it was there was quite puzzling, but while it did look pretty scary in its own right, compared to what I could be dealing with, it looked like a fluffy teddy bear. I continued on through the water tunnel and surfaced at the nearest place for some air. It was at this moment though, that out of the darkness, I saw it. The mosasaur. It swam right next to me, checking me out, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Quite how this magnificent creature had survived was a mystery, but all I can say was that the metal bars protecting me suddenly seemed rather weak. With a new sense of urgency, I continued on, and opened the next door. I had lost sight of the mosasaur, which perhaps terrified me the most. It was incredibly dark down here, and as I continued swimming I could barely see where I was going, especially as I was surrounded by weeds. I reached the next door, which was massive, and I had no idea what was in this area, but I was drowning, so I had no chance to look around instead, and I just had to swim to the surface as fast as possible. In truth, if I was about to die, I think I'd be happier not seeing whatever monster it was coming for me. I was too scared to even look around anymore, and swam towards another area of cracked glass, which looked like something enormous had smashed through it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the mosasaur through the remaining glass, but I did not stop to play around. I swam as fast as I could up a tube-like structure, and finally to safety. My heart rate had never been so high in my life, but I had escaped the single most terrifying, yet fascinating place I'd ever been in my life. I was so curious as to what had happened there, I decided to do a little bit of digging in my fact file while I caught my breath. Apparently the Marine Conservation Centre was once the flagship attraction for Prehistoria, as it was one of only 2 global breeding programs for the mosasaur and the megalodon. However, its public operations ended after a juvenile megalodon shattered the reinforced glass of a viewing bay, resulting in 3 guest fatalities. Truly something out of a horror movie. The field notes did also say that they had no idea what had remained inside. Clearly the mosasaur was alive, but how and what happened to the megalodons? Well, of course we knew where one of them was. Yet this was none of my concern at this moment, and I had to press on with my mission, and we were now in the South Amusement Zone. I had no idea what to expect from this area of the park, but I knew that I would find out soon enough, as I was about to enter what was seemingly a dinosaur enclosure. No idea if these creatures had been on display or not, as this emergency bunker that I went into looked like it had been left to rust for quite some time. I found what turned out to be a giant lift, and pressed the button to take me right to the top, where I hoped I'd be able to get a good view of what was below me. However, I couldn't really see anything, but it did all seem quiet, which was promising, but slightly too quiet, one could argue. I took the lift back down, and then realised that it looked like the electrics had broken to this gate, which had been busted wide open. I was about to walk into a rather wet-looking dinosaur enclosure, with no idea what was in here. Hopefully though, it wasn't the home of Dave the Dinosuchus. Instead, I tiptoed around and picked up some spine leaf before running into my first dinosaur. It was okay though, it was just a nice friendly Gallimimus. But as I went further into the enclosure, I could hear something bigger, and it didn't sound friendly. Sure enough, through the trees, I spotted what I assumed to be a Suchomimus, and I did not hang about. I shot it a couple of times with my shotgun, and took it down before it could reach me. I was getting quite good at this taking down dinosaur business, and I much preferred it to swimming next to a mosasaur. I pressed on through the enclosure until I reached another gate, which I went through, which led me to another lift. This led to a big elevated platform with a cage-like structure which acted as a bridge. Below me I could see a maze of some sort, and my old favourites, the raptors, were back. I did try to shoot them from the top here, but didn't quite have the range on the shotgun. It appeared that I was going to have to go into the maze with the raptors. I opened the cage door to the maze and immediately got my shotgun at the ready. I was so close to Pier A now, and hopefully getting to safety off this island. I could hear the raptors though, and I knew they were nearby, and suddenly out of nowhere came two of them. The shotgun did make quick work of them though, and it took me a while to realise this one was dead, as it apparently died standing up. That was the sheer power of myself and the shotgun. I was about half health now, so I popped a couple of bandages and resumed my exploration through the maze. The only good thing about these raptors is they were rather loud, and I could hear their breathing getting closer and closer as I rounded every corner. Thus, when three of the things ran at me, I was ready. I do wonder though, had I not opened the door to that armory and picked up this shotgun, how on earth would I have survived all of this? The maze was actually pretty easy to follow, thanks to a couple of green lights leading the way. I did have a bit of a jump scare at one point though, when I thought I ran into big old Dave the Dinosuchus, but it was just a stone statue. Close escape there. After reaching the end of the maze, I picked up the key to the old ferry ride, which would unlock the door that led to the ferry. I could smell my freedom now, as we were so close to it. Still, I had to be on guard at all times, as I had no idea what else had been left in this area of the park. Thankfully though, it seems to be all quiet, and I made my way to the ferry where I activated and took the tour. The whole area in general and ferry ride itself was pretty run down, likely because it had barely been used or upkept since they shut down the Marine Conservation Centre, but it did take me directly to Pier A. Once I arrived at Pier A, I checked the coast was clear, and then realised that I couldn't yet open the monorail station, so I headed to the Dino Bike Cafe, as I remembered that's where I read the green access card would be, which I did indeed find in there, as well as the key to the monorail station, which I was able to pick up after dropping a couple of items in my backpack. I grabbed a note also while I was here, which was apparently left for Callum. Whoever poor Daniel and Angela were, they had apparently left to fix a breach at the raptor range. The whole thing really did seem like a sabotage on the park. I swear I'd seen something similar on television before. Anyway, I would be surprised if they'd survived, as after all this place had been crawling with raptors since the moment I arrived. I left Dinobites and headed off into the monorail station, where I boarded the monorail for what would be the last time. On the way out, I got a fantastic shot of Billy and his brachiosaur friends, seemingly enjoying life. The whole experience had honestly been one of the most terrifying things that I've ever done in my life, but the respect that I had for these beautiful specimens was immense. Perhaps this was life finding a way to free them. Apart from all the raptors that I'd had to kill, of course. There was no saving them. Arriving back at the pier, this is where our story ends, for now. The full game of Claude is scheduled to launch sometime before the end of the year, and I am so excited to get my hands on it. Everything showcased today is just a demo, but I think the developers of this game could really be onto something special here. I'll leave a link in the description to Claude on Steam, so you can wishlist it or go and play the demo yourself. They have added some new content since I played it, so there'll be plenty of stuff to get your hands into. If you want to see me play Claude on the full release of the game, don't forget to leave a like and a comment on the video. And thanks for watching all, and I will see you guys next week for some Jurassic World Evolution 3. Bye bye for now.